o'clock at night, you should get food.
Well, you get
They
a
pay
free
for
meal.
your dinner for your banquet, though. You get paid for those two.
I don't know. But come on, you know, a free meal, break.
Those noon and dinner
Come on,
night.
you come to some of those.
What do you think of this per diem thing?
And I've had some of them.
Oh, yeah, me too.
But you wonder if you really want to eat it.
Where did this come from? How long has it been in this box?
The reason I'm voting no is because I'm not gonna be on this.
That's fine with me.
But remember, you.
I don't think they should go the other way.
No, who cares?
Because of the fact, I've been on the board here 10 years.
If you want to be a decent guy, you'll vote yes. If you want to be a you'll vote no.
I'll be,
It's fine.
Executive.
With other departments,
I just don't want to see it.
No, it just came yesterday to.
If anything, you know, they'll probably discuss it
And,
some.
and it had, apparently had to be on this agenda, so that when,
the papers you go.
yeah.
I'd actually like to see the county board go down because we don't do anything.
It might be something that should be raised someday, you know.
Time was
That's where we do all the work.
It's fine either way, man. I don't care. But I don't want to see it go.
What about work then?
And I asked them a couple months ago, look into it.
that's right.
Steph does, okay.
I don't know if she does it.
Bill isn't gonna be here. Down.
I didn't know it was coming up, otherwise I would have checked with some of the other counties when I was there.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that either.
Don't we change the color of her hair again?
I didn't know it was coming up either, Joe.
Hey, what, I don't think she knows what color her hair is. I really don't think so.
Of the sports show.
I do.
March would be the second week in March, probably.
I always like picking on her.
So you don't know either?
Scott will.
Can you include in this, or maybe you did, the E911, the Tim's project?
Right now, all I know is that they're scheduling for
But
me.
maybe we can do it because I heard that they're dragging their feet.
Okay.
for one side.
Last I knew, George was talking to Tim. Tim's on vacation.
Yeah, but maybe next month or the following. Just so, because his deadline is July.
Yep.
And I heard he doesn't want to do it till October.
Got a couple minutes yet.
Why is it every time I come in here, they tell me something?
9 o'clock.
I'm sorry.
I don't know who moved it.
The queen, I move it here every time, and then they move it back.
Where's our bill done?
Add that to my
Get up and
checklist.
talk, he can explain.
Morning,
it to you.
Ruth.
Good morning.
Talking?
I'll get my chair. I can stand.
Already set the budget.
You guys
Everybody
move
just-
chairs down and so we can get moving to me, but I know his name.
Oh, for crying out loud.
I know. So
It's
demanding.
awful,
Ruth
isn't
should
it?
have a chair.
You have to have a chair too?
No, I don't need a chair.
Warm one, too.
Ruth is gonna sit back here.
Oh, thank you, Everett.
Stole your chair.
You know,
From now
every,
on, someone needs to warm Ruth.
Yes, that's
Are you
what's
getting
gonna be next.
different heights?
Ruth don't wanna sit by me? Okay.
Now I got a short one.
Thanks, everybody, for the little musical chairs thing.
That's my pre-county board checklist.
I don't remember about these guys.
Causing all this commotion.
What is all this stuff?
Again?
Oh, I gotta pass
Who
it
uses
down.
this evening besides?
Yeah, and I didn't do it.
Has a birthday on the
She needed a chair, that's what.
30.
30? Are you kidding? Mom, I don't know. I think Mr. Tim might have done that, maybe, so he can explain what his.
Okay, this other thing
Yes, sweetie.
that we got.
Mr. Kirschner passed away last September. My name is Mark. Yes,
Yesterday. Dropped it off at the house.
that's fine, that's fine, yeah. Park it there any place, no problem.
Sure.
They'll think you're a midget.
Make sure you leave the keys in it so we can take it for a ride.
Are you still?
they tell me that I'm supposed to start driving my winter car. That's not as much fun.
I'll call your dad and have him come
No,
down.
it's okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Listen to this. Listen.
Suffer.
Oh.
Suffer.
You want some?
It doesn't have the lever, does it?
No, it
What do we do with our hair again?
I don't know.
I need some cheese to go with my wine. My chair is.
Are you girls ready?
I want my chair back. No, Everett, I want my chair.
Of course. Thank you.
We'll call this meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors to order, and we'll start with a roll call.
Mrs. Krantz.
Here.
Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Fiaski.
Here.
Mr. Weddy.
Here.
Mr. Downey is excused. Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mrs. Plata. Here. Mr. Weiss.
Here.
Mr. Gellerup.
Here.
Mr. Crawford.
Here.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, it is for our budget public hearing. In other words, anybody, the public that is here can get up and address the county board at this time. Is anybody here who wish to do that? Sheriff Peterson?
I supplied everybody, hopefully you found them. I didn't find many people home last night, so I don't know what's going on Monday nights around the county, but I supplied you with some information. There was 3 revenue items that were removed from my budget. I guess I'm requesting they put them back in. I gave you some suggestions of where that revenue could be put into the expense part of the budget to cover some of my operating costs, but I guess I'm not as concerned about where that goes as the fact that I think that ATV, snowmobile patrol, boat patrol are vital to law enforcement services in Waushara County, especially in the boat patrol in the summertime, and the contract services for municipalities, I think has given us the opportunity to improve our presence in the county, and I think one thing that's forgotten is that by having that presence, either the snowmobile or the boat patrol and the contract services are in the center of the county. You might not see that as benefiting Coloma, Plainfield, Poisippi, or West Bloomfield, but in reality it does, because most of those calls we're going to have to respond to anyway, and if I got to pull somebody from an outlying area into the center of the county to deal with that, and we have really made, over the last 8 or 9 years, made a real concerted effort to be law enforcement for the entire county and having a presence throughout the entire county. So I guess I would just ask that you consider putting those revenue items back into the Sheriff's Department budget, and I made some suggestions of where I could use that money to offset my operating costs. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for the public hearing? Anybody else wants to speak to the county board? Apparently not, so we'll close the public hearing and resume our county board meeting. So we'll stand now for silent prayer and then pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is our time for public comments, and no one has registered at this time. We have an amended agenda. We need a motion to approve it.
I'll move to approve the amended agenda.
Dan Sweeney, seconded by Mrs. Krantz. Any discussion on the amended agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of that say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's been approved. Minutes of our October 18th meeting and the final county supervisor plat hearing, how do you find? Motion by Larry Crawford. Second by Everett Eckstein. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's been approved. There's no old business, and we're getting into new business, and we'll start with reports and Ruth on our bonding issue.
Let's see, the fobs are being distributed for the courthouse in the North Annex, so that changeover will be made soon. The bid documents are being prepared for the work release remodel. We hope to be doing construction in January. The buildings have been set at all of the towers except for Poisippi. They're currently breaking ground at Poisippi. The generators at Saxville and Marion have been installed and are operational. Motorola will be at the Sheriff's Department next week to start working on the changes at the department and the tower over there. The telephone system, the initial employee training has been, well, they were doing it again this morning, so it might be almost completed. And then the internet should be converted to Charter yet this week, and then we'll be going live with the new phones later this month. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. This time we're going to have a presentation on floodplain remapping. It'll be Terry Poxted, Zoning and Land Conservation Department Director.
I am going to show you the new maps later, so I think I'll just stand over here and talk. DNR and FEMA are proposing new floodplain maps for Waushara County. It is part of FEMA's nationwide map modernization project. When they found money, I don't know where, but they did find some, they hired DNR to update Wisconsin's maps. We were pretty far down the list, so we're one of the last counties to be undergoing this. And in order to be in compliance with federal and state floodplain programs, there is that dual layer of regulation that the county is mandated to enforce. We will need to adopt these maps when they're finalized. I do want to explain some basics about floodplains so you kind of know why we have the maps. And when the floodplain maps were first drawn up, they used the USGS topographic maps from the 1960s, and those have 10-foot contour lines on them. So when they first drew them, they kind of, I imagine people in an office somewhere taking a felt tip pen and going to the closest 10-foot contour line that they saw along a river or a lake. And that was done countywide unless there had been a detailed engineering study done. We do have a few of those. The studied areas in Waushara County include the Fox River by Berlin, the Pine River south of County Road A to the Poisippi Dam, the Willow Creek from near the intersection of County Road Z and State Road 21 to the Auroraville Dam, the Rattlesnake Creek below the Mount Morris Dam, that was done by the Mount Morris Lake Association as part of their dam failure analysis, the Bruce Creek from Lake Alpine Dam to County Road Z, that was actually done in conjunction with the Parks Department and our land conservation technicians, and then both the White River and Bird Creek within the city of Wautoma are studied. All other stretches of rivers and most lakes do not have studies, and so they do not have established flood elevations on them. What this means for the property owner is it's very difficult for the property owner with waterfront property to figure out if they're in a flood-prone area or not, other than these roughly drawn maps. And this can affect their ability to get a mortgage on their house. And then existing structures that lie within floodplain boundaries also have restrictions on them, so we do not increase the probability of property damage or endanger human safety during a flood event. The other thing you should probably know about floodplains is that they divide the floodplain into two main categories. There's the floodway, which along a river makes sense because you'd have moving water, floating debris. You know, it's a very dangerous area of the floodplain. And then there is flood fringe, and those areas tend to be water storage areas, the backwaters, the marshes, and the areas around a lake where you don't have moving water. Only a detailed engineering study can tell you where the floodway gives way to flood fringe. The water's all at the same level. Someone just asked me, what's the elevation difference? Well, there isn't one. The water's either it's always at the same level, but it's either moving or it's not. So it's difficult to tell the difference. And the only places that we know the difference is in those studied areas in Waushara County. The other thing that you'll hear a lot about and what the maps delineate is what's called a 100-year flood. And what does this really mean? You know, it means that in any 1 year you have a 1% chance of having a flood of that magnitude. So if you got a flood event at that chance every year, there would only be a flood of that magnitude once in every 100 years. But we know that statistics and probabilities don't work that way. So each year there is a potential to have that 100-year flood at a 1% chance in any given year. And it could happen 2 years in a row. It could not happen. As in the case of the Fox River in Berlin, they've never had a 100-year flood, and they've studied that one, or they have elevations on that river for like 120 years, and they've never had a 100-year flood. So it does fluctuate, and you just don't always get it at the probability chance that they say. So the remapping is to show a 1% flood chance everywhere in Waushara County in both the studied and unstudied areas. And from these maps, people in offices somewhere recently in Texas, I think there's a lot of floodplain determination offices and companies, and they determine whether an individual property owner has the potential for flooding or not. What if a property owner feels they are not in a flood zone? Well, it becomes their responsibility to prove that they are out. And this usually includes hiring an engineer to do a detailed study of the area if there isn't one done. And then they have to document that study and the results with a survey of their property. If all the work shows that they are out of the floodplain, or at least their home and structures are, which is the majority of them that come through, they then apply to FEMA for what's called a LOMA, or Letter of Map Amendment. And that removes a portion of the property or the structure from the floodplain. So what really happened with the maps? Well, not much, because there wasn't a lot of new information for them to change the boundaries. We did have a couple areas where they did change a little bit. When I looked at them, I don't see any big changes. I don't see vast areas with homes on them that have been put in. Conversely, there's not areas that have been taken out either. That's good news and bad news, because people that were sure that they weren't in the floodplain before suddenly have not had their property put into the floodplain. But the bad news is those that thought they were out aren't going to be out either. What can you see on the website? When they provided us with the maps, they provided them on aerial photos, and those files were just way too large for us to post at this time. So we chose to overlay them on tax parcel maps. And in addition, we were one of the few counties that had a digitized version of the old maps. So we have a product that in the unincorporated areas, you can see the old map that was approved by DNR and FEMA juxtaposed with the new map. So you can actually see where there are changes. One more thing about the floodplain remapping process is it's been indicated to me, we have several LOMAs on file, and we're double checking our records with FEMA's right now, but the floodplain manager at DNR has indicated to me that people that already have a LOMA on file, they couldn't remap them because of the scale of the maps. I mean, probably the line is 50 feet wide, so they couldn't go around a house or whatever. But they will adopt the new maps, and then they will issue a cover letter that says all the old LOMAs will be honored with the new maps. So that's good news for all those people. They don't have to redo that part of it. And they are posted on Waushara County's website. It's one of the buttons right on the front page. They are in by township, because that's how we had our tax parcel maps done. I'll pick Marion because that did have some changes because of that study that we did with the Parks Department along the Bruce Creek below that Lake Alpine Dam. And even these take a little while to load, so you could imagine how long it would have been for an aerial photo. This doesn't look like my computer. I want to zoom in. Do you see a little zoom? That's it. So here's Lake Alpine, and the purple is the boundaries and delineating the old floodplain area, and the green is the new. And when we did the study, we realized that there would not be any floodwaters coming out through the boat landing. If you're familiar with the park, it would all come through the dam, which is up here. And we actually got quite a bit of area taken out of the floodplain with that study. But there are no structures in this area, if you're familiar with it, so it doesn't really affect property owners that much. Any other townships too, there just wasn't that much change. But you can certainly go online and look at your area of concern and see what, if anything, did happen. One other thing, DNR and FEMA are going to hold an open house on December 8th at the World War II Center. They have geared it for municipal officials and county government officials in the afternoon. And then at 6 o'clock in the evening, they will open it up to the public, so any landowner can come in and ask questions about the process too. So that will be coming up on December 8th, and you'll probably see notices of that, and I will certainly be there for that. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Terry? Okay, well, thanks very much. It's very interesting. This time we've got some discussion of possible action items, and this is the Waushara County Water Quality Improvement Cost Share Program. Terry, you're going to give us the information on this also?
I'm going to start. I'm going to give you the overview, and Ed's going to give you the details. Thought you'd probably get sick of me talking after a while, so I'm going to try not to talk the whole time this morning. We're here today to give a short presentation on a proposal to start a water quality improvement cost share program in Waushara County. Our committee has discussed this for several years, and it actually started when the makeup of the committee was different than it is today, so it has been going on for quite some time. It was further fueled when our budget this year happened to be just over $40,000 under budget. And immediately you're probably going to ask, why didn't we just put it in the budget? And people have asked me that, and it's a legitimate question. But the committee and staff both felt strongly that the full county board must be behind such a program because we wanted it to be a line item in future budgets. So we're asking at this time that that part be considered. Putting it in the budget for just 1 year didn't secure it for anything beyond that, and subjected us to whatever would happen with budgetary issues in the future. The committee sees this as essential to support conservation values. We want to encourage the installation of sound practices all over the county and promote clean water in the county. Those will be the three major criteria that we're looking at. The idea is not unique to Waushara County. Waupaca County has had a program operating similar to this for 21 years. They designate $75,000 per year to the program. Unfortunately, most of their funding is now used for staffing and not for projects, so their effectiveness has definitely dwindled over time. Winnebago has had a similar program for 12 years. When they started, they polled a cross-section of their taxpayers and asked them what the average price per tax parcel they were willing to pay on their taxes for such a program, and that came out to $16 per tax parcel. In Winnebago County, that was more money than they could even think about spending. So they settled on a $100,000 per year cost share program. And since their implementation 12 years ago, they have utilized anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 every year for projects. For comparison, the amount that we are asking for is comparable to approximately 75 cents per tax parcel in Waushara County. What are we really asking for? We're asking for a startup amount of $25,000 per year for a 3-year period. The funds would come out of surplus during the trial. When developing the program or the idea behind the program, we felt it was only fair to have a trial period, and then we will come back and tell you how it's worked, what we've done with that money after the 3-year trial period before we ask you to make a final decision on adding it to the budget. This will give us time to tweak the program too. Obviously, we've never done it, and we have other counties to look to, but we do realize that there will probably need to be some tweaking of the program during that time, and we'll report that back to you too. We're going to do all this with existing staff. We don't need any additional personnel, and we certainly understand that our timing may not be the best. Budgetary issues have been at the forefront of every county board meeting I've attended. But we also decided that we didn't know when the best time was going to be. And sometimes you just have to ask. You know, it comes down to, we felt it was an important idea, it's an important program, money's drying up everywhere else, and so we just wanted to, rather than wait for the perfect time, we're going to ask now. We also want you to think about how important clean water is to everyone in the county, as well as our businesses. Farming and tourism seem to be our two major businesses, and they both rely on clean water, and sometimes they're almost within hundreds of feet of each other. So we feel, and these programs tend to benefit those two property owners the most. It's the ag community and the waterfront property owner that do seem to benefit from these programs. We're not going to ask you for a decision today. Ed's going to go through the program and try to delineate more of the details for you. And then we would come back in December with a resolution asking you to authorize this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Ed now.
Morning, everyone. When we first looked at this water quality program as a staff, there were three things that we were hoping to get done. The monies that we're asking for would help encourage some of the projects and practices that Terry talked about. Currently, we have a ranking sheet, and the numbers on that ranking sheet we've talked about before. The higher that number, the higher the resource need, and the higher the resource protection value. So projects that we fund get a numerical value. We start at the top until we run out of money. Additional monies with this program would help us reach down on that list a little farther and help fund practices like the one on the front sheet, which is a windbreak. Windbreaks have significant water resource, particularly surface water resource value, but in our ranking sheet, which is defined in our land and water plan, they don't simply rank high enough to get funding. When there's enough money, then windbreaks get cost shared. So do wetland restorations and other practices that you see listed. But with the monies that are coming from state ag and NRCS, those funds are drying up like every place else. So this additional money would help us reach down on that list of projects to install additional water quality projects and practices that are eligible for cost sharing through state ag and DNR. There's just not enough money at those levels. The second thing it'll do, and I think it's really important, is it's going to help leverage additional monies from DNR, Department of Ag, and the federal government. We talked about this before at some other meetings where every dollar that you spend on levy towards staff and cost sharing, we can buy $2 or $3 or sometimes $4 worth of cost share practices. And I don't know where else you can get that kind of return. That's just good business. So every dollar that is provided into this, we can then apply that to additional monies through DNR and NRCS and other federal programs. So it's pretty important that when we apply for projects and cost of concrete, excavators, plumbers, those prices are not coming down. Those are just simply starting to increase. And the amount of cost sharing doesn't buy those kinds of practices anymore. So the ability for us to leverage more money through the state and federal government is huge. Partnerships right now have been the way to go over the last several years, more so now more than ever. For us to add money to that pool gives us the opportunity to reach out and grab more money and put it back into Waushara County. And then third are the environmental benefits that we'll see from water quality from this program that Terry talked about. One of the things that the monies are drying up everywhere. If you look down at number 2 on that front sheet, back in 2004 we had almost $90,000 in cost sharing. This year we're at $38,000, over a 50% cut in cost sharing. Right now there's 9 projects on that list, $57,000 additional monies that we need that we don't have, that we can't fund for conservation. So the need is there. There's plenty of landowners that are willing to participate. We just don't have the additional funds to help install those water quality practices. One of the things that we're going to measure this by, what are we going to call success? Well, I think the farm tour we had last month on the Krenz farm is a real good example of what those cost share dollars can do. Kevin mentioned that there's about $3 million on that farm that's generated in revenue. It's all spent within 13 miles of the farm. That money spent on housing and fuel, groceries, the people that work on the farm. And that was a direct result of having additional cost share dollars to expand that pit, to make his own personal farm more economically viable. Okay, that put his folks to work. It put plumbers to work, excavators to work, masons to work. I know we have a hard time getting our hands around, an economic stimulus. We've heard that a number of times, but on a very simple and basic level, this is a working model of helping to stimulate that economy. And there is no project too small, especially for the contractor that gets awarded that particular project. So those are some of the things that we'll use to measure our success. And I have every reason to believe that this program will be successful. And in fact, I think there'll definitely be more demand than there will be money. The environmental benefits too is, back in 2002, we talked a little bit about administrative rules, NR 151 and ADCAP 50. Those are still in place today, and those are still required for landowners to implement certain cost share practices. The caveat, if you look down at number 4, is that it requires a 70% cost share. So even though there's a landowner, or if there's an issue out there that we need to address, without 70% cost sharing, we technically cannot enforce any of those performance standards. So this would give us an opportunity to not only reach down on that list of practices, but then to address certain concerns that we've identified to soil and water resources. And there's a list of practices and things that we can do, but the issue now is partnering and certainly pooling resources, pooling staff from other agencies in terms of technical design, and that's really where we are today. It's been where we've needed to go, and we've been applying for different state grants in the past, and we've been pretty aggressive at trying to get additional monies into Waushara County, and then some of the farm practices that we took you on had some of those state dollars, and that was a direct result of the partnerships that we've been able to secure. So this would just help enhance that and keep that going, and I think you have a real unique opportunity to do that. So that's kind of in a nutshell. The nuts and bolts, I think, we'll figure that out as we go a little bit, like Terry mentioned. I think we're going to stick to our basic plan on how we're cost sharing and how we're evaluating projects. This would just give us an opportunity to again, reach down that list and then implement those particular performance standards with cost sharing. That's required by administrative rule. So with that, that's kind of where we are. If you have any questions, otherwise, thank you.
Any questions for Ed or Terry? Fred?
Yeah, I have a question. Did I do that?
Okay.
I have a question. How does the need for some cost-sharing project like this come to the committee's attention?
Well, there are a number of ways. In terms of the performance standards, we have a process in place where we go through landowner and file review, and some of those landowners get flagged that way. So sometimes we'll initiate contact and calls for practices. Some of them, a majority of them are word of mouth. Attached to that is a letter from a particular landowner that we installed some shoreline protection on it. He was real pleased with the product. And typically it's word of mouth. So as more and more projects get installed, more and more landowners come to us with requests. And typically there's more requests than there is money. Those are typically the ways we get projects brought into the department.
So in regard to this letter, those people came with a request to the committee to get this shoreland work done? Correct. Okay. Are there other occasions where, you may have just mentioned this, where there is seen to be a problem and the committee reacts to that by contacting the landowner and offering this assistance?
Correct. I mean, in terms of implementing the performance standards, for an example is we're working on a project now in the town of Bloomfield, okay? We've applied for state money and federal money, And then we're going to use some of our county cost share money, or SWRM dollars, to install some of the performance standards that are required. So even though this landowner has a large operation and is doing some expansion, we are still required to implement some of those performance standards which we require at the county level, so that there's definite water quality protection in this particular case. Now, this person was not reported to us as a violation, although we will go out on those too. And there have been some of those in the past.
Sure.
But in this particular case, he has to meet administrative rule requirements, which require the 70% cost sharing, which we don't have. We have a little bit, but we're able to partner with federal and state to get him up to that 70%.
Okay, I have one other question, and it has to do with the Krantz Farm. Point B, it says no leftover, and I just need to know what that really means.
Well, it means that we're not going to carry monies from year to year. So the monies that we ask for annually will be spent annually.
Okay. All right. Well, the whole thing sounds...
Right.
Yeah. The whole thing sounds like a marvelous plan to me.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thanks very much for the presentation. Okay, at this time, the county board supervisor per diem rate has to be set for the 2012-14 years.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that the per diem rate remain the same as it was, and no change.
Okay, we have a motion by Dennis Weddy, we have a second by Larry Crawford. Any discussion on it? Hearing none, all in, yes, Larry?
I don't have any problem with the rate of per diem, but I've had a problem with the policy that doesn't allow more than 2 per diems per day. I've had to attend meetings on the same day as the county board meeting, and I wasn't able to be paid for those meetings. I was wondering if that policy could be changed.
Well, that is set by state statute at this time, why we do it that way. We'd have to be an organized county for that in order to change it. Otherwise, that's set by state statute. Where it's 1 per diem for a county board day and no more than 2 per day of the others. If you're an organized county where your supervisors, say, are elected every other year, you can set your own rules and regulations, but we're not an organized county that way.
Can we set a rule that they can't have a meeting on that, another meeting on that day?
Well, we can do that, just don't have a meeting and say, no, we cannot, because due to the fact of county board, the idea of 3 meetings a day, that happens to me on a regular basis, but if it does to other people, I really don't know. But that's why it is that way, Larry. Yes?
I guess I would like to have some consideration too, if you went to a conference and you started at 8 o'clock in the morning and got done 8, 9 o'clock at night, that you could have more than 1 per diem for that day. I mean, if you go all day, you get a $40 per diem. If you have 2 regular meetings during a day, you get 2. But it's just something to think about, because, you know, I just went to one, but we started at 8 in the morning and we got done at 9:30 with the banquet and the programs and all that at night. It's a long day that you get 1 per diem.
Only time we've ever got 2 per diem for 1 meeting or so, if it ran past midnight. Or they run past midnight, then you get a per diem for the next day also, but.
Do we have any information on what other counties' rates are?
There was no, I have no information on that. We had some years ago, but
There might be a survey, that I can access through other county clerks,
We need to decide today.
I don't think you're that out of line.
Everett.
I was wondering if there could be anything set up so that if a meeting lasts over 6 hours, that there was possibility of 2 per diems. That is using up the whole day. Again.
No, I'm not attorney on that one. Ruth, is there something on that or not?
These are all things I'm writing down notes and have to talk about at the next executive meeting, because those would be rules. They're not, you just need to set the amount today, but we'll talk about all the rules on how to get those per diems at the next executive meeting.
Okay, any other suggestions or comments?
Does anybody know when the last time that this was adjusted? Per diem was adjusted?
Been a while.
Been a long time.
When I started, it was $35 and went to 40. It's been 40 ever since, so.
I'm thinking that Green Lake is 50, and they don't charge more per county board. And with us having short county board meetings, to me, it's equivalent to a committee meeting. Committee meeting is where you do your work, and there's a lot more. I think it would be a straight across the board per diem wouldn't bother me at all. Because sometimes with a half-hour county board meeting, and you get more, I've spent 3 hours in committee meetings. So, just some thoughts.
Okay, any other suggestions? Otherwise, we got a motion and a second on the floor to leave it the same as the last term. Any other discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's been approved. Okay, County Board Supervisor Conference Lodging Reservation Policy, and there was a slip typed in there of what they are. Any questions on that? Yes, Fred.
Do I read that to mean that the departments will not be making those reservations anymore, that individual board members will have to do that themselves?
That's right, that's for lodging reservations. Too many different ways of doing it, and people are doing different ways, and we thought we standardize it this way. We need a motion to accept that.
To accept that?
Fred, second by Mrs. Krantz. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's been approved. Now we're going to have consideration, possible action on the following resolution and ordinances.
Resolution 40-11-11, resolution approving the Waushara County 2012 budget appropriation.
Need a motion? Motion by Donna Collada to approve. Motion by Dennis, or second by Dennis Whitey. Any discussion on the budget? Yes, Larry.
I have a couple concerns. I'm looking at page 21. And by the way, I distributed a sheet showing where the county tax dollars go and how much tax dollars would amount to for the various departments or projects on a $100,000 property. A lot of people ask me, you know, where are our tax dollars going? What are they being used for? And just trying to get a breakout of it, I think it could be helpful. One of the concerns I have on this page is that the numbers don't add up. If you add up the total expenses, they're listed there, the 9 expenses listed on page 20 and 21. It doesn't add up to the 425, 544 shown as the total. But almost $1,400 off. Do the same thing with the revenues. On the previous page, on 18 and 19, you add those up, and again, it doesn't total the amount on the total revenues. I don't know how this could happen, but it does.
What was the variation on that last item?
It's $1,393 is the difference. Not a whole lot, but you know, the figures should match, I would think.
Was that the only place you found this problem, or
I
was
didn't
that
check the
as far-
math on
as
the
far
other
as you
ones.
got? Okay, all right,
But I happened to do it on this one.
okay.
The other concern I had was that there are some items on page 20 and 21 that did not appear in the 2011 budget, especially the amount for the contingency expense of $308,601. And I'm wondering why the change is on those.
I think Donna probably can address that the best. They were in other budgets, and it was all pulled out, right?
This contingency fund is part of the dollars that we were allowed to go up in budget, and that they are used for future expenses.
So where is this money gonna go?
If it isn't used, it'll be put back into a designated fund for like next year. If we're at 0 again, that money can be used to offset 2013 budget.
Is there some sort of penalty or loss if we don't have it in the budget?
You'll lose it completely. You'll lose it forever. We were supposed to have 214,000, and they cut it down to 68 that we could use this year. So this time we've decided that, executive decided that if we go up to our maximum, at least we aren't going to lose any money that we might be able to use next year, 2013 budget.
It was a business decision. The way the state has the restrictions on, if you do not do not work that in, you lose it forever. And so it's trying to do the peaks and valleys is trying to keep it more constant.
But we don't know if the state will continue with the same policy.
Well, it's 2 years, so we know it's going to hit us next year again. We know for 2013 it's going to be the same.
And then that, your health insurance is gonna go up next year, no matter what the governor says. That means if we don't have this cushion, it either comes out of surplus or comes out of money.
How much funds do we have in surplus?
Pardon?
How much is our surplus?
6 million something.
Be listed.
But there again, you take 50 million, it isn't, a year or whatever, it isn't gonna last long. 500,000 a year lasts. And that's what we've been using in certain departments every year.
You should have about 3 months' worth of reserves for cash flow purposes, so you don't have to do short-term borrowing, because you have times of the year where you're not having income, but you still have those expenses. You're spending money on a regular basis, and so that's your cushion. So you don't want to take that down too low, because then you get into some other issues, short-term borrowing issues or whatever it is. And I guess I just want to remind you that the reason you got such a good interest rate on the bond and everything was so favorable with the bond is because we were financially healthy with the reserves. So you aren't forced into short-term borrowing. So I'm pretty protective of that. So I hope you don't start cutting into that.
Any other discussion on the budget? Not? Yes, Fred.
I guess in response to the sheriff's presentation this morning, I just wondered what is the position of the controlling committee on the request that he's making for these various services?
The request was tabled at the last meeting, and it will be discussed at our next meeting. We put back on at that time. that it'll, at least will be discussed. If it's gonna go through or not, that's gonna be up to the committee and whatever facts we have. But at the present time, we decided to leave the budget as is, and, meeting we will discuss.
Okay, I guess that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay,
Donna, do you have any idea of why that, the math?
That 1,400,
Yeah,
that's probably the difference between 8,500 and the 98.65 from the beginning. I probably didn't
oh,
re-add
okay.
it. Because it went, I had 8,500 in there just so that we'd have a final total. And then the computer worksheet from the state came through and it went up to 1,400.
Do you have any concerns that the bottom line is wrong?
I don't think so, but I can go down and double check.
Probably should wait and get an answer to that, just to be positive.
I was wondering about the sheriff's clothing and uniforms, and he's spending $15,000 a year for all his officers. That's a lot of money. Everybody gets a new uniform every year? How can you?
It's a clothing allowance. They get
They
so
get a
much,
clothing
they get
allowance.
so much money that they can use to purchase replacement uniforms.
They get to keep it even if they don't spend it? Okay.
It's a voucher system. They have to turn in vouchers for what they purchase. It has to be approved items. And then for their contract, they have up to so much per year.
that was said in union bargaining also. At the time, it was all bargaining.
It's not unusual, I think most counties and cities do that because of the need for a uniform, you know. It's the same as everybody else's.
That
So they
type
don't
of,
come to work in it.
yeah, that type of,
But they don't change them.
no, but that kind of clothing is expensive.
Yes.
You know, it'd be more expensive than if you just bought something off the rack.
Usually a lot better made.
Where's better? The sheriff does not have a line item for a new vehicle, but he wants to put one in. Is that a?
No, he does have a line item for vehicle replacements.
I didn't find it.
I think there's enough money to replace 2, I believe. Right now. That's how much is in there right now. It's on page 97, Bernadette.
Oh,
It's,
purchase a vehicle. Okay, above the one I had just checked.
There is,
Q1.
there's $60,500 in that line item right now. No other questions? You guys are way too quiet.
That'd give us a song and dance to keep us entertained.
Supervisor Geller? He got a haircut.
Never ask me again.
I guess while we're waiting, I did provide you with paperwork for next year's election, your nomination papers, declarations, candidacy, and all that. I have a cover sheet that explains it all, but there are several of you that, even if the composition of your districts is similar, you're changing district numbers. Like Supervisor Tim, I think for instance, it's basically the same setup, but you're going from like District 2 to 3 or something like that. So there are several of you that have that situation happening. So you will need to fill out a declaration of non-candidacy, which is at the bottom of the pile for your old district number, and then your new paperwork should reflect your new district number. And I filled in the blanks for you with that kind of stuff. Like Mr. Eckstein, you're another one.
I think I'm 5 and now I'm 6, but I will be 5.
So you'll have to fill out that non-candidacy.
Thank you.
And all the deadlines and everything are on there for that. Non-candidacy is due a little bit before the new. If you have any questions, feel free to call me.
Chairman,
Go ahead, Fred.
I have a question on the vehicle purchase. I guess on the sheet, the letter we got from Mr. Sheriff Peterson, there is an item down on the front page, and it says the vehicle purchase $26,000. That would be what would be paid for a new vehicle. Is that correct? And do I read this now to indicate that that vehicle will not be purchased and that money will be available for these items that the sheriff has on his sheet?
I'm a little bit of a disadvantage. I have no idea what you're referring to. I don't have the same information in front of me, so.
What page are you on?
Well, it's the front page.
Oh.
I'm only talking about the letter that I received. And it has, in that third paragraph down, in order not to impact the proposed tax levy, and then there are fuel and maintenance, vehicle equipment, and vehicle purchase, and there's $26,000 there, and it just seemed to me that if I'm reading this correctly, that that's going to come from the line item that the sheriff had for vehicles.
Well, without having a lot of time to look at this, it looks like he's asking for an addendum. And you can do an addendum at any time. You don't have to do it today. You can do an addendum at any time, because if I'm looking at this correctly, he's asking you to increase his revenues by $35,000, and he's asking you to increase his expenses by a similar amount. So you don't have to do that today. You can do that as an addendum.
Well, and this would probably be the business that the controlling committee would be dealing with at a meeting coming up, and that's the addendum that they will be working with. So my question is, the point is moot, I guess.
Okay, Donna, what'd you find out?
It's the 1393, that's in both the revenues and expenses. The revenue total should be $1,965,669, and the expense should be $428,437. Still comes up $1,538,772. Bottom line is correct.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna.
Okay, as long as the bottom line is, okay. Everything explained on the budget. If we have a motion, a second to accept it, this is a roll call vote, and we will start with the roll call.
Okay. Mr. Eckstein.
Aye.
Mrs. Kalata.
Aye.
Mr. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. Gillerup.
Aye.
Mr. Crawford.
Aye.
Mr. Kirschner.
Aye.
Mrs. Krentz.
Aye.
Mr. Tim.
Aye.
Mr. Piaski.
Aye.
Mr. Weddy.
Aye.
Okay, so that passed. Now we got ordinance number 537.
Ordinance number 537, an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Section 30-7 of the Waushara County Code.
Motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Donna Colada.
I would second.
Fred Gallerup. Any discussion on it? Yes, Fred?
Could I presume that the one change has to do with a new piece of property added to parks, and the other is a result of the concealed carry law?
Yes.
Okay.
We did add the property that we received donation from, and then the concealed carry law doesn't allow us to prohibit carrying on open lands that are owned by the county, so that change is in there. And then the change on the backside of the traffic, that's a policy that the Parks Department has always used with the committee, and so they just wanted that in the ordinance to say that hunting and trapping is not allowed without permission in any of the parks.
So then you can't hunt with a gun?
If you have permission, it would be different, but the concealed carry law.
It seems like it's a contradictory
No,
thing.
the concealed carry law says that you can have it in open land. If you have a proper permit, we cannot stop a person from, with a concealed carry permit, from carrying in parkland. The law specifically says that. So you have to have the proper permit, you have to be properly licensed, but if you are, you can have your gun with you at the park.
Yes, Fred?
The hunting and trapping item on that resolution or ordinance, that permission might be granted if it's to the advantage of the Parks Department, if there is some reason to allow somebody to do either hunting or trapping on county land?
Correct.
Has that ever arisen? Has that ever been an issue?
Have you ever had trapping?
We have allowed trapping on a limited basis, and we have problems with, for instance, muskrat control, but it doesn't happen to.
Okay, thank you, that's it.
Can I clarify that, Fred? Scott mentioned,
Or,
I'm sorry. Scott mentioned mushrats. We've had them chewing holes in some of our boat docks. They love those plastic docks because that's home. They don't have to build a house, and that's why we've
Okay.
allowed that.
All right, good. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's been approved. This time we've got two appointments to the Fox Valley Workforce Development Board, Jeff Behringer and Mike Kwankel. Okay, he's the manager of our new factory over here. And we will start first of the year on the Workforce Development Board. Anything for suggested items for our next meeting?
Need a motion to approve those.
Oh, okay, we need a motion to approve those appointments. Okay, a motion by Kirchner, a second by Mrs. Krantz. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's been approved. Yes.
Good, Jaren.
I think that, Dave, in the future, if you could deliver these things earlier, it doesn't give the board enough time, when you get this at 9 o'clock at night, and especially if some people weren't home, it doesn't give us enough time to thoroughly look at these things. And then also, I think our administrative coordinator should have a copy, as well as probably Ruth.
County clerk, for the record.
Yes, and the county clerk. I don't know how anyone else feels about it, but 9 o'clock at night is not usually when I'm ready to do this stuff.
Comment. Any other information? Otherwise, we got a motion by Everett to adjourn. Do we have a second to that motion? Larry Kim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
You know something? You know what she
Levy
did?
doesn't change with all this.
Scolded him in
Our
public.
levy does not change with all this.
Uh-oh. You're
If any of you don't want your budget, I will